All right. Good evening, everyone. Hey, I apologize in advance for my appearance here. I've been fighting with some plumbing all day, so you get me kind of disheveled and a little messed up. So, apologies. But to start off, I did chapter 1, and this is Hurtado's Destroyer of the Gods, Early Christian Distinctiveness in the Roman World. So to start off, this was a fairly brief chapter. Hurtado split it into two sections. He did Jewish responses and pagan criticisms. Now, the Jewish section kind of surprised me a bit because it only featured Paul. There's a lot of literature in there that could have been added, but what surprised me at first, I realized then I guess he didn't need it because he hit the main point that Judaism, being collective in nature, would have hit the same point from the rest of them. So it's not surprising to see that the Orthodox community, the Pharisees, are going after the Christians because they see this as heretical. That's not surprising in the least. So while I was surprised at first, I was surprised that I was surprised after I kept reading. So, if that makes any sense. Now, he does make a good point of his philosophical reasons in doing so. And he did say that Paul referenced his zeal in prosecuting the Christians. Now, when I first read that, I don't know what I was thinking, but I referenced the fourth philosophy instead of Phineas going back Numbers. So I initially read that and then I had to go back. So if you made that mistake, no, he was referring back to the book of Numbers, not the fourth philosophy. So if you made that mistake, you're not alone. All right, moving on to pagan criticism. The pagan criticism starts off is much more brutal, and he does provide a lot more sources. Now, the good thing is he didn't stay in the brutality. He went to the good points, the arguments, instead of the gore, which I like that. I mean, if you really like that stuff, you can go watch the movies of it. They're filled with them. So to start off, he went with Pliny. Now, one thing you can pick up is the political intention here. They clearly started lies about Christians, and then they went in and they prosecuted to prove the lie. And this isn't one of the oldest tricks in the book. You'll see this more. I shouldn't say you should see this more, but you will see a lot of that if you look for it throughout the world today. It's the same exact thing. Pliny gets the brunt of a lot of that in this writing, and Hurtado does apply it to some of the others, Galen as well. One thing that I was kind of surprised with is the mention of Marcus Aurelius. Normally, he's kind of left to the side because he's the Stoic, the philosopher. He wasn't spared here. He was only given a tiny paragraph, but most of it, most people don't even mention him in this case. And I was kind of glad to see that there. When I was a young man, I did get attracted to the Stoicism, and Marcus Aurelius' Meditations is a really good book. So that drew me in. But most Stoics don't know his involvement in his brutality against Christians. So that's good to see him brought in that light. Not quite on his pillar like he's normally presented. Of course, he went into Lucian, Celsus, and a lot of the same story. But good information throughout. Now, one thing that caught my attention is in the summary. Hurtado said, so not only was early Christianity different in some key respects, but also participation in Christian faith must have offered things that attract converts and compensated for the considerable social costs incurred in becoming an adherent. He then said, but we cannot go further into that topic here. I would simply observe that one of the curious gaps in recent scholarship on the origins of Christianity is an adequate treatment of what made early converts think it worth the cost. I can see a lot of modern thinking in this. I mean, if you think of the primary teachings of eschatology today, it's pre-tribulation rapture. God is here to make you comfortable. In some cases, he's almost treated like a genie. God is more of a genie to people today. Now, of course, that's not the case everywhere. But one thing that he does miss, and there is particularly abundant evidence, especially going through some of the early teachers, that show that the reason people did not either renounce Christ and then try to come back to the faith or just do with the lying is because it was tied to the kingdom teachings. They believed that if they were martyred, they were guaranteed a spot. And you can read, Revelation didn't exist prior to that, but the teachings that if you died for Christ, you were guaranteed a spot at his right hand. You were given priority in the kingdom. And many Christians pursued that. They wanted to be martyrs. They wanted the opportunity to die for Christ as he died for us. And I was quite surprised that he left that as just a lack of scholarship. Now, granted, it is not popular in scholarship. It's not popular anywhere in most respects. I could count on one hand the number of pastors that I know that actually teach the kingdom as it's presented. But overall, I got to say it was a good book, especially if this is presented to a layperson. They would definitely have a lot of good information here. And chapter 1 starts off really well. And I love that he skipped the gore. I kind of wish he had more Jewish responses just to shore up that belief a little bit. But he did establish the obvious point, that the Jews treat the community collectively in terms of expecting punishment if there's a huge segment that doesn't participate as they should, according to the law. But overall, good book. I think I covered all my points here. Good. But good class, good talking with you guys. Hopefully I'll see you in more. Take care.